Welcome or welcome back to the channel. My name is Megan Maldonado. This is the Medieval Masculinity series, and we are diving back into Chaucer today for an unexpected man to look at for this series. We're going to read Sir Thopas together, the Tale of Sir Thopas. Why is this unexpected? Well, if you know the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, again, remember, this is late 14th century. Those are some of the earliest kind of turn of the century texts that we have. Chaucer is writing about a lot of different people. He has all these different pilgrims. He has all these pilgrims telling their own tales on their way to Canterbury. We never actually get to Canterbury in this collection. This is not a romance, by the way, but Sir Thopas is. Now, the funny thing about Sir Thopas is that the teller of the tale of Sir Thopas, again, all the pilgrims are telling their own tales, the one who tells Sir Thopas, or Sir Thopas, is Chaucer himself, kind of. The Pilgrim Chaucer, this is how scholars differentiate between Geoffrey Chaucer, the poet of the entire Canterbury Tales and other works. We call him the poet Chaucer. We call the character in the Canterbury Tales, who does act a little bit different. He's his own kind of funny little weird elfish dude. We refer to him as the Pilgrim Chaucer, and so you might hear me go back and forth between those two terms. The Pilgrim Chaucer is the one who tells Sir Thopas, and he's the only one who actually gets two tales to tell. In the beginning, the host says that everyone's going to tell two tales. Chaucer, the poet, never shows us that. But Chaucer the Pilgrim gets two, and that's because Sir Thopas is apparently so bad that the host stops him mid-tale and is like, knock it off. This is some drasty rhyming. This is some of the worst stuff I've ever heard. It's not worth a turd, he says. Literally, turd is the word. And then Chaucer, the Pilgrim, sets in on the Tale of Melody, which is, I love it, but it's a total snooze, for being honest. So we're going to read Sir Thopas, the Tale of Sir Thopas, together, and it is available online between a Middle and Modern English translation through Harvard that we're going to look at. It's free. And so let's look at it. And what I want to look at with Sir Thopas, which has often been called a romance parody, and with good reason, I want to ask, what is this Tale of Sir Thopas parodying? Is it parodying some idea of chivalric heroism, of chivalry itself, or virtue, or just a silly guy and he's being dumb, but other knights are very brave? What's the parody here? What's the joke? Now, I love to recommend this to students. This is Harvard's Chaucer website, and they have all of the prologues and tales to the Canterbury Tales. Only thing is that the Parson's Tale, I think, is only included with modern English. I'm not sure why that's done in prose. But let's look at Sir Thopas. And the way that this interlinear translation works, if you haven't looked at my Reading Middle English series, where I also consult this resource, the way that this site works is you have in bold the Middle English, and in the normal font you have modern English translation. You can see here, you can probably tell that this is not modern English, that's Middle English. Every tale, or just about every tale, to my memory, see, I always make generalized statements and then I feel like there's going to be one thing that I forgot. But as with many of the tales, I should say, there's a prologue here. So this is not part of the romance yet. This is when the host is selecting Chaucer the Pilgrim to tell the tale. Everyone has just listened to the prioress's tale, and that goes for many of the manuscripts of the Canterbury Tales. There are many versions of the Canterbury Tales. Not all the tales are in this order that you see listed here on the side. I believe this follows the Ellesmere manuscript, which you can find at the Huntington Library. If you're in California, you can get to Southern California. Highly recommend, by the way. So I believe this follows the Ellesmere manuscript ordering. The prioress's tale almost always comes before Sir Thopas. That's important for my dissertation, but maybe not for our conversation today. And so everyone has just listened to this sad tale of a little boy who was martyred very complicated story to tell, especially in today's political climate. So when you're reading here, one said, was all this miracle, every man as sober was that wonder was to say, till that her host to Japan though began, and then at erst he looked upon me, and said thus, what man art thou, quoth he. So when everyone's looking really sad, and the host begins to jape and look around, it's because he's trying to switch up the tone. Everyone's really somber, they're reflecting on this sad martyr story, and now the host looks upon Chaucer and says, what man art thou? Thou lookest as thou woldest fiend a hare, for ever upon the ground I see thee stare. Approach near and look up morally. No are you, sires, and let this man have place. He in the west is sharp as well as he. This were a puppet in an armed embrace, for any woman small and fair of face. He seemeth elvish be his countenance, for unto no wish doth he dalliance. Chaucer the Pilgrim, remember when I said that they act kind of different? Chaucer the actual poet, the historical guy, and then Chaucer the Pilgrim, this character here. Chaucer the poet does not depict himself in a very favorable light. We have this elvish little dude who is just looking at the ground, and the host is like, I think you're looking for a hare, a rabbit, basically. And you look like you're scanning for something on the ground the way that you just don't look at anybody, and you seem kind of elvish because you're not talking to anybody else here. And Chaucer, I guess, is just like the entire time. So the host is prompting him. See no somewhat, see no other folk han said, tell us a tale of mirth and that anon. Host, query, Chaucer the Pilgrim, ne beth not evil apaid, for other tale certis canny known, but of a rime he learned long agone. Yea, that is good, quoth he, the host. No shall we hear some dainty thing, methinketh be his cheer. So, a rhyme. Now, a rhyme, you can see that he's obviously rhyming here, so you don't have to necessarily be rhyming, and therefore it is a romance, a chivalric romance, but kind of shorthand. Rhyme, romance. Romances were often in tail rhyme. What is tail rhyme? That form, that's the tail end of the line has rhyme in it, and we're going to look at the rhyme scheme used here. Now we have a very short prologue. We think it's going to be some dainty thing, or at least that's what the host says, given Chaucer's cheer, his appearance, his comportment, I would say. So this is divided into a few fits, a few, I don't know if chapters, maybe a one-to-one term, but it's divided into a few segments. He starts off, listeth lordis in good intent, and he will tell vehement of mirth and of solace. I'm not going to keep outlining because it interrupts the flow, and I need the sound to sound good here. Just know that I'm starting from the top, and I'm going to be reading in the bold. Follow along in the modern English if you're not picking up on the Middle English right away, which is totally normal and fine if you're not reading a lot of Middle English. Okay, let me start over to get the rhythm, because the rhythm really counts here, the meter. Listet lordis in good intent, and ye will tell vehement of mirth and of solace. All of a knecht was fair and gent in battle and in tournament. His name was Sir Thopas. Born he was in fair country in Flanders all beyond the sea, at Poppering in the place. His father was a man full free, and lord he was of that country, as it was God's grace. Sir Thopas walks a doughty swain, which was his face as pandemane, his lip as red as rose. His rod is leek scarlet in grain, and ye your tell in good certain, he had a seemly nose. His hair, his beard was leek saffron, that to his girdle rocked adone, his shone of cordowane. Of Bruges were his hose and broon, his robe was of skillatoon, that cost many a Jane. He could hunt at wilde dare, and read and hawking for river, with grey goshawk on hond. Thereto he was a good archer, of wrestling was there none his pair, that any ram shall stond. Full many a maid, breech him boor, they more for him paramour, one him were bet to sleep. But he was chaste and no latour, and sweet as is the brimble floor that beareth the red hip. And so befell upon a day, for soth, as ye would tell me, Sir Thopas would lot read. He worth upon his steed grey, and in his hand a lance gay, a long spear be his seed. He pricketh through a fair forest, therein is many a wildebeest, yea, both buck and hare. And as he pricketh north and east, he telleth yo him had almost betide a sorry care. There spring in herbs great and small, the licorice and the ketewal, and many a clug gillifrey, and not a mug to put in all, whether it be moist or stall, or for to lay in cofre. The breeders sing, it is no nay, the sparhawk and the papagay, that joy it was to hear. The throstle cock made eke lay, the wood dove upon the spray, she sang full loud and clear. Sir Thopas, feel in love longing, all one he heard the throstle sing, and pricked as he were wod. His fair stayed in his pricking, so swart that men meeked him ring, his seeds were all blood. Sir Thopas eke so where he was, for pricking on the softer grass, so fierce was his courage, that down he laid him in that place, to make his steed some solace, and yaff him good forage. O Saint Mary Benedicte, what aileth this love at me to bind me so sore? Me dreamed all this nicht per day, an elf queen shall me lemon be, and sleep under me gore. An elf queen will I love I wish, for in this world no woman is worthy to be me mak in tune. All other women I forsak, and to an elf queen I me tak bidel and ek bidun. And to his saddle he clammen on, and pricketh over still and son, an elf queen for to spee, till he so long hath ridden and gone, that he found in a priva one the country of Ferry so wild, for in that country was there none that to him durst read or gone, neither wife ne child. Till that there came a great giant, his name was Sir Oliphant, a perilous man of deed. He said, Child, be termagant, but if thou prick out of me an hunt, anon I slay thee stead with mass. Here is the queen of Ferry, with harp and pipe and symphony, dwelling in this place. The child said, Also mought I they tomorrow, will I mate with they when I have mean or more, and yet I hope par me fay, that thou shalt with this lonsegay a been it full sober. The more shall I person if I may, ere it be fully prime of day, for here thou shalt be slow. I promise I'm almost done. Keep it going. Sir Thopas drew back full fast. This giant at him stone is cast out of a fell staff sling, but fair escapeth child Thopas, and all it were through God's grass and through his fair bearing. Whew. Apologies if I misstepped on any of the pronunciations there. I was trying to get that kind of rocking horse rhythm. It's bouncy, you know? That's kind of part of the joke to begin with. This Dolores in good intent and evil terriment of mercenas. It's making fun, Chaucer the poet is through Chaucer the Pilgrim, his little avatar, making fun of the overly simplistic, saccharine, sing-songy meter. Again, I call it a little, rocking horse or hobby horse, where you're just kind of going, you can even imagine like Monty Python, the coconut shells, I think it was, when it's like, and it's just making that sound over and over and over again. And that's exactly what Thopas is doing. He is pricking around. The word pricking comes up quite a bit. I can even search the term. Pricking. His fair stayed in his pricking. Even, yeah. Pricketh, pricking, he's doing a lot of it. There are two valences to the word pricking that we should appreciate. One is indeed, spurring, also, how do I say this? Moving around, either galloping around, not just moving, but you're on horseback, kind of wandering, pricking around on horseback. And there's also the stabbing element to pricking, and we have that still today. If you prick your finger on a needle, you've cut it. In a particular, something has pierced it. And is there an erotic valence to that? I think so. I think that's also part of the joke, but we'll set that aside for now. Maybe come back to it, we'll see. And so I went through all of this, And what I hope you picked up on, and if not, I'm about to go through it. It's not just this sing-songy meter. That's one element of the form that does lend itself to the parodic reading or the parody reading. Some of it's also just the awkward rhyme. Some of it is very clean cut, clear. Yes, swain, pandemain, rose, grain, certain, nose, all of that goes together, but in a kind of awkward or forced way. How often in love poetry or in some kind of gallant chivalric poetry would you expect rose and nose to go together as rhymes? The thing about reading form in poetry and understanding what it is that poets are doing, why we should appreciate different formal elements to poetry when we're doing our close readings, is that when you're rhyming things together, the idea is that conceptually these things are also kind of linked. I'm terrible at coming up with examples on the fly, but when you're making things sound similar, you also want those things to themselves be similar in tone, in effect. His lips being red as rose, it's a very romantic, even intimate, erotic image a little bit. And then he has a nice nose too. Like, okay, where are we going with this? That's kind of the vibe. So if you're like, why, that's a little weird, it's a little awkward. Yes, that's supposed to be the effect. And then we get into a further taxonomy of his appearance. His hair and beard being like saffron, so blonde or kind of yellow. He has all these nice things, and this idea of the knight who's very finely dressed, and that itself being a little suspicious is something that Chaucer kind of plays with earlier. We see the actual knight, the pilgrim, but he's looking a little run down. Chaucer does like to use clothing as an indicator of what we might be able to anticipate from a character, even if, let's say, we're dealing with a prioress. A prioress is supposed to be somebody who is extremely pious and has abdicated kind of worldly goods, and yet she has very fine white bread that she gives to her dogs. Funnily enough, his face is compared to white bread here. Remember, the prioress was the tale that just came before. Again, probably more interesting for my dissertation, but when you're looking at somebody's clothing, or the kinds of things that they have, the prioress having white bread, and she's very delicate and dainty and very clean and presentable. Yeah, okay, we can expect perhaps a prioress to be clean and none to be clean, but if somebody is looking too well dressed, their garments are too expensive, or you can think of this with clergy even today, pastors or priests. If you see a priest driving a Bugatti, you're like, what's that about? And it sends off little alarm bells. I don't know that we would mistrust Sir Thopas for having nice girdle and shoes and stockings, and his robe is also, very expensive. I don't know that we would dislike him for it, but we are alerted to the fact that his stuff is maybe too nice, and maybe he himself is pretty delicate. So we've looked at the cost, and indeed, Chaucer the Pilgrim tells us that cost many a Jane. This is of the robe, but we can infer this has to do with just about everything that he's wearing. And then we learn, as you should learn about a knight, we learn about all of his famous deeds, right? And all the brave things that he's done, right? Wrong. No, we learn that he knows how to hunt wild animals and go hawking. And he, let's see, he's a good archer. Oh, he's got the gray goshawk on hand, as one does. He's really good at wrestling. He wins the ram, and this is a common prize, at least in England, as far as I know, in the period for winning a wrestling competition. And so we don't get really bravery, like deeds of bravery here. We are getting various masculine hobbies, maybe we could say, but not actual fights that he's been in. He's killed animals and he's fought men, but for sport, not in battle. There's a full many a maid, Maritimbour, they mourn for him, paramour, one him were bet to sleep. So late at night, when it was better for them, hem here might sound like him, but it's them. When it would be better for them to sleep is when it's what they say here. They're thinking about him late at night, wink, wink. And he's chaste and no lecher. And he was sweet and, sweet as this flower. You don't have to know what the flower is. The point that's being made here is, oh, he is so handsome and he is so lovely and beautiful. And he's once again compared to a red, well, I don't know if the rose above, was it red? Yeah, his lips red as rose. He's also compared to another red flower, and he's so beautiful and gorgeous. And is that what we expect a knight to be described as? Like we hear about all of his fun little hobbies that men do get up to, and he's also just so gorgeous and beautiful, like a red flower. And the ladies love him, and they also thought he was so beautiful, but he would never sleep with them. Now, listen, if you were to hear that description of somebody today, what would be your thought of that man and his sexuality? I'm not making that serious of a reading about Topaz being presented as gay, but I think it might be available. It strikes me as a modern reader, that's the impression I get, whether or not maybe that's in the period, an assumption, but I think it's available. Anyway. What we're seeing, though, is a knight who is not known for really being a knight. Or maybe he is. Then this is the question I wanted to think through together, which is what's being parodied here. We could say, oh, well, that's not what a knight does. A knight is brave, and a knight does all these different things, and he has these maidens that he's in love with, and he's probably also very virtuous and very handsome and good looking. And I mean, Topaz is kind of fulfilling that, but to a ridiculous degree. And so we might ask ourselves, well, is chivalry itself kind of ridiculous? The idea that a knight would be really excellent in all these different noble hobbies, maybe, or he at least participates in them, and he's handsome, and he's well dressed, and women love him. This is, does that fulfill the chivalric hero metric? And if it doesn't, well then, that's another aspect of the parody. Our romance hero should be maybe a little grittier. If not gritty, he is at least brave, and he faces combat, and he risks his life. And we've seen in the other romances that we've read together, heroes who are willing to put their lives on the line for things that matter to them. We're not quite getting that with Topaz, as we continue to find what does matter to him. And again, as we're asking what matters to him, it's part of the parody. What's being parodied when we see what's really important to Topaz? Well, what's important to him so far are his dainty things, his hobbies. And now, I'm not even going to keep going through all this. The birds sing, so there's lots of bird song, and he's in this idyllic kind of, you can think of Snow White when she sings, and then the animals come together. He's not singing, but it is a similar image. He's in nature, and everything's beautiful and harmonious, and it touches him so deeply. He falls into love longing. I think that's much better than a yearning for love. He's in love longing. And then he hears the bird, and he's riding his horse so hard and spurring it on so hard that, a weird side note, the steed is so sweaty that you could wring it like dry, and it's also, his sides are full of blood. It's a really ghastly kind of image in the middle of all this fun, lovely, beautiful, natural imagery, which I think is also like one of those weird, almost what's the filmmaker that I'm thinking of? Wes Anderson. He'll have like one of those odd details and then just kind of move on. That's how the humor strikes me, but anyway, I'm not going to make too much of that. Anyway, Topaz is getting so enraptured with all the beautiful stuff in nature and all the bird song, and he was so tired from riding on soft grass. if I have to explain the joke, then it's not funny. But he was so tired from walking around in this beautiful little grassy area, and he was so fiercely brave for walking around and riding his horse around on the grass that finally he lies down just to catch a break, and then he falls into this prayer to Mary, "O Santa Maria, benedicte." Oh, benedicite. I'm not. Maybe that's a little Latin. What aileth this love at me to bind me so sore? And then he's dreaming, he's saying in this prayer that he dreamed of an elf queen. Lemon, shall me lemon be a lemon? A sweetheart is fine. Yeah, a lover, but not with a necessary sexual connotation. But yeah, a lemon. I want an elf queen to be my love, to be my sweetheart, and to sleep under my cloak. And I will love her, for in this world no woman is worthy to be my mate. In tune, we'll talk about that little awkward bit here for the meter in this whole stanza. But notice, he doesn't have a particular woman that he's thinking of, a particular elf queen. There is a comparable romance called Sir L'Enfant, and there's French version, Middle English version, all that. L'Enfant, or L'Enval in the French, is somebody who, he's a knight in King Arthur's court, and he meets an elf queen, but her name is Triamore in the Middle English. So it's a nameable woman, and there's other supernatural kind of fairy magic stuff that goes along with it, but that's an actual woman that he meets and then falls in love with, and they have this relationship. Topaz here is just so enraptured by nature that he gets it into his head in a dream that an elf queen, maybe any elf queen, there's no specificity, just an elf queen. I want one now, and I want her to sleep next to me under my cloak. It's ridiculous. It's stupid, right? It doesn't make sense. It's so whiny and petulant. It's, oh my god, I want one now. Like that's the vibe that he's giving in this prayer to Mary. And then after he mentions the elf queen and how desperate he is in this love longing we see, then the stanzas start getting really wonky. An elf queen will wholly love I wis, for in this world no woman is worthy to be me mak in tone. All other women I forsak, and to an elf queen I me tak, bedel and ek bidon. This in tune, we're having a little bobbed part of the stanza here. Just, it's a blunt, two-syllable kind of effect to, that's the technical term, by the way. It's this blunt ruining of the momentum of this otherwise kind of crappy momentum too, because again, we're in this kind of sound to the poetry, and then it kind of stutters and then keeps going. I love this. And so what I should say, think, and I'm kind of thinking of other critics too who have read this as parodic, just about everybody does. What Chaucer is doing, Chaucer the poet, is he's working through his avatar to present himself as a bad poet. But the thing is, in order to write bad poetry, you have to be incredibly talented, because you have to know all the conventions. You have to know what works in order to intentionally break it in such an obvious way, but then also in a planned way too, where your breaks are oriented around the awkwardness of your protagonist. It requires so much knowledge of poetry and poetic form, but also excellent practice and the great discernment to know what is going to be so bad that I don't know if it's so bad that it's good, but it's so broken that it actually works in his favor, in Chaucer the poet's favor, in order to show a romance hero who is stumbling around and awkward, and the stanzas are also stumbling around and awkward, and he marries that form with the action of the poem. It's so good, it's brilliant. But what's being parodied? Is it just what our idea of what romances should be? Are we parodying the romance genre and the romance hero along with it, the knight? Are we parodying then, if we are parodying the knight, Is it a parody of literary knight? Or maybe even just like chivalric courtly ethics and our prioritization of them? Let's keep reading, but keep these questions on our minds as we keep going. Okay, so he's decided that he wants an elf queen. Hooray. Climbs into his saddle, pricketh over steel and stone an elf queen for to speed. So he's just roaming around. He's like, I'm gonna find one, I'm gonna get one. Like, doesn't matter who. It literally does not matter who, as long as he finds an elf queen. Then he finds in a secret place in a privy one, country of fairy so wild. Again, awkward Bob here. For in that country was there none that whom there's near gone, the reef nor chilled. Okay, and then there's a giant. So the joke, or part of the joke here at least, is that there are often giants in romances. We don't always talk about them in the videos that I've done, but let me think. Did we do in Gunther? Gunther does not quite a giant to my memory, although there are the kind of weird-bodied people, Gunther being one of them. In the Fahrenbras cycle and Sultan of Babylon, there is a giant that we don't discuss. My point is, there is often a giant, often a Saracen giant, who comes up to be the obstacle to the hero's quest. And this little romance or romance parody is no different. There came a great giant. His name was Sir Oliphant. If you're a fan of Lord of the Rings and you've heard the term Oliphant, yes, this is Middle English spelling for elephant, so you can think he's so big that he's like an elephant, not necessarily that he is an elephant here. A perilous man of deed said, Child. So this again speaks to the littleness of Topaz. Be termagant, but if thou prick out of mine haunt, anon I slay thee stead with mass. A little awkward again, like, I'm gonna kill you with a mace. Like, that would be a kind of modern, I guess, retelling of it. And what is the threat here? The threat is, hey, I'm gonna kill your horse. I mean, yeah, not good, but it's so unserious. Like, they're not actually fighting each other or threatening to fight each other. Topaz comes up, he gets threatened, like, oh, if you don't run away, the giant says, I'm gonna kill your horse with mace. And Topaz's response is, well, as I may prosper, I will come back tomorrow when I have my armor, and trust me, you trust me. This lance, you are gonna pay. This lance is gonna make you pay. I'm gonna pierce you. If I'm able to, I'm gonna pierce you, and it'll be 9 o'clock, and it'll be here, and you'll be dead. That's what's almost in order. That's what he's saying. It's preposterous. And so Sir Thopas, he drew back full fast. He runs away. And the giant throws stones at him out of a sling. Again, it's like play fighting. It's pretend. And that's what I think is so great and so brilliant about this parody of a romance. And I think what Chaucer is making so ridiculous is something that's already, maybe he is arguing at least, that these stories are kind of ridiculous. These romances, these chivalric tales. Yeah, it's all just pretend. None of it's a real show of masculine virtue. These knights, there's one way of reading these romances to say, these are inspiring stories. These are great models of virtue. William Caxton in the 15th century, he thought the same thing of Thomas Malory's Morte d'Arthur. But then there's another perspective to look at this and say, well, yeah, these are nice stories, but this isn't really being a man. Being good at hunting and hawking and dressing well and being admired by women and wrestling, I guess, you're strong, but not in a way that you're defending anybody. You're just strong to show off how strong you are. What is that doing? That's not chivalry. It's not a useful kind of chivalry. Maybe it's a chivalry that matches up the romance metric for a chivalric hero, but what is it doing for anybody else but himself? the hero, so-called. So we're already, as we're only in the first fit, which is the longest one. So we're almost at the end of this. Believe me. What we're getting with Sir Thopas, not just the character, with the whole romance parody, is I do think that Chaucer is poking fun, if not at actual knights, and I don't think it's that. I think it's more of the expectations for what a really noble chivalric hero looks like. And maybe he does look like Topaz, and maybe that's the point. Maybe that is the joke. Or another reading, maybe Topaz is so ridiculous, but he still gets to be a knight anyway. And what does that say about the whole enterprise of chivalry? I think this is why after the quest for the Grail, for King Arthur's court, the court breaks up, because you see how splintered and fractured and how poor the character can be of some of these knights. So there might be different things being parodied here. We're only part way through this romance parody, but something else is going on beyond just, oh, it's funny, it's it's a silly little story. I think it is that. I think it's entertaining too. But there's more to it than just, oh, look how funny this little dude is. I do think that the poem is telling us something about romance heroes and chivalry. Maybe it's something that actually is a little bit more serious. Beneath and with the joke that Chaucer, the poet, is telling, is, I think, a pretty serious commentary, not comedy, pretty serious commentary about what we're expecting chivalric virtue to look like and how it presents and how much we admire it and why. I think these are all questions and thoughts that should be coming up for us here. Okay. Now we're in the second fit. And Chaucer is reminding us, reminding the other pilgrims, Chaucer, the pilgrim is reminding the other pilgrims to listen up. Yet listet lordes tu mi tal, murio than the nightingale, per no I wol yo rona. How Sir Thopas with seedus small, this is the second man with a slender waist. Chaucer was the first one. The host said he was so small, so lean of waist that you like he could just put him in a woman's lap and he would sit there all dainty and cute. Topaz seems equally cute and slender. Remember how red his lips were and his beautiful, I think his cheeks were red as well or something. Anyway, so he's coming again to town. So he's fled the giant, gone back to town. His merry men commanded he to make him both gam and gley for nearest most he ficht with a giant with hevidis three. So the giant now has 3 heads. He didn't have that before. Is it an exaggeration? Could be. I think that's funnier. So Tobas is coming back. He's asking his men to get games together because tomorrow he has to go fight. As what's the correlation there? I don't think there needs to be one. And now they're summoning the minstrels and the jesters, to tell tales. And he's going to be listening to all this while he's getting armed. And he wants to listen to tales of romances that been royals of popes and of cardinals, And what Topaz wants to hear about are romances that been royals of popes and of cardinals and eke of lovely king. So he wants to hear romances. This is a romance hero who wants to hear about more romances. There's this excess of generic conceit and maybe that's not the right term. There's this, let me try again. So what Topaz wants to hear about are Romances that been royals of popes and of cardinals, and eke of love leaking. What's going on here, I think, is that there is such an excess of romance tropes that even the romance hero wants to hear more romance. And Chaucer is just kind of throwing up romance tropes and motifs and expectations all into this jam-packed little sing-songy rhyme of a romance hero. So Chaucer, the poet, is hitting you via his pilgrim avatar, hitting you with just all these different dumb expectations for romance, such that you are aware that this is a romance because you're getting all the tropes at once. It's almost like what are those movies? The Scary Movie franchise. Do they still do those? I don't know, but where they're hitting you with all the kind of stupid tropes all at once to show how ridiculous they are. I think it's a similar vibe going on here. So they fetch the sweet wine, they fet him first the sweet wine, medic and mazeline and real spicerie. I actually don't know what a mazeline, I mean, yes, I can see maple drinking bowl. I don't actually know the use of that, to be perfectly honest with you. But what I do want us to notice are all the sweet things coming up. Sweet wine, mazeline for maple, spicery, spices, as today don't necessarily mean that something is spicy, like nutmeg is a spice, cinnamon is a spice. These are sweeter tasting spices. A gingerbread, same thing, a spiced bread. Filfine, licorice, cumin, which you might not think of as super sweet, but it has a kind of light citrusy taste. And sugar. So extra sweet, extra romance, extra everything, super indulgent, sweet, dainty little guy. This is not our typical knight. This is not our typical romance hero. Chaucer the poet, and through the Pilgrim, is beating us over the head with the idea that he's not working as a great knight. I'll ask again, why is he doing that? But I want to keep getting through this because there's more ridiculous stuff to look at. Put next to his white lair, white flesh. Why is the white flesh line important? Because doesn't seem to be, I think implicitly, doesn't seem to be very scarred, doesn't seem to be very tan, so he's not spending a lot of time out of doors. Very white skin, both in this period, and also you can see this too in Eastern Asia, in Japan. I'm thinking of, and maybe perhaps I think Korea as well. The whiteness of skin is a class indicator because you're not spending a lot of time outside. This is where the term, by the way, well, not from here, but why do we have the term redneck for white people, especially in the US? Because your neck would get red and burnt from working outdoors, especially if you're out in the field and the sun is beating down on your neck all the time. So white flesh is a class indicator. It also indicates that you're not spending a lot of time probably doing hard labor or working very hard out of doors, certainly. So it's a tiny little detail there, but I don't want that to get lost. Okay, so he has the white flesh, cloth of lac, fin and clair and brech and eke shirt, and next to his shirt, an eke tune. This is so stupid. It reminds me of the George Clooney Batman. If you've ever seen it, watch the beginning montage when he's getting ready and there's the, I'm not going to enumerate everything, but it's like the getting on of all the stupid little accoutrement, and he's putting on the belt, he's putting on the breastplate, and you're watching this and you're like, why do I need to see him getting literally everything on? I don't need to know every single detail. You don't need to watch in your montage of your hero putting on the suit. You don't need to watch him put on like one sock and then the next sock. Like it's stupid and it's too much detail. So again, in what we expect a romance narrative to do, not just the hero, but what we expect the narrative to do is, give us a little arming up of the hero moment. Maybe he gets his shield and his sword and he puts on armor or something. The parody goes even further to say, no, like we're watching him fully get ready. He's getting ready for this fight. He's putting on this layer, and then he's putting on this layer, and then he's putting on trousers. Oh, and then he put on a shirt. And then next to the shirt, he's putting on a jacket. It's abundance of poetry it's too much poetry. It's excess and it's full in the way that there's too many sweets. A little bit of sweetness is good. You're eating so many sweets, you're going to get sick. And that is what Chaucer is doing in this poetic way. There's too much consistency in the rhyming. There's too much of the sing-songy meter, too much sweetness, too much everything. It's brilliant. And he's still getting dressed. Got the habergeon, hauberk, all wrought of Jewish work. Now, I'm not so sure about this. I'm not so sure about this gloss. You know, is it jewelers or is it Jews? The reason that it might be important is because the previous tale has a lot to say about the Jews. It's one of those blood libel stories. We'll set that aside, but go read that one if you're curious what I'm talking about. Okay. Or that his coat are more as wheat as is a lily flower, in which he will debat. Now, I personally think there's something else to this lily flower image that I'm not going to disclose because it's part of my argument that I'm trying to make in my dissertation that I think is not, I think one other person has kind of made the connection, but I want to do more with it. Anyway, but what's important to understand that is his white surcoat, his coat au mort, there's no heraldry imagery there. He doesn't belong to any particular house. He has no affiliation with anybody. Nobody will take him on. So maybe he's not a great romance hero even in his own universe. A thought. It's proposed. It's implicit here. But he does have a sigil or a little sign on his shield. He has a boar's head beside a carbuncle, a red gem. What's noted here. And note too, I don't think I mentioned this, that topaz is a gem name. Topaz, like the jewel. So we're getting lots of fine, dainty, beautiful things, and Topaz himself is named for a fine, dainty, and beautiful thing. Okay. Then he swore on ale and bread how that giant shall be dead. Betide what betide. Whatever may happen, but I think betide what betide is so much more fun to say. And you can't take him seriously, like, oh, he's getting all his fine little things on, he's getting dressed, and oh, I'm gonna kill that giant. Like, believe you me. Honey, nobody believes you. Come on. Okay, and he's still getting dressed. Jambor, Kirboli, swears sheth of Ivory, his helm latumbrit, saddle was of ruled bone, his bridle as the sun shone, or as the moon licht. A few critics have made light of this passage. It's like the poet's confused about his, what he's even comparing, Chaucer the Pilgrim is confused about what he's going to compare the brightness of it to. Oh, it's as bright as the sun, or maybe the moon. Like, they're both bright. Like, it's so silly. His bed was a fin surprise, both were nothing pace, that head full sharp y grown. Cypress, by the way, is a very weak wood, if you're not into woodworking. It's not a great thing to use in battle, because it's gonna snap. But the head was full sharp y grown, and the steed was all dapple grey, and it goes and amble in the way, full softly and round, inland. So he's getting ready for war, and here's his soft grey steed, likes to wander around, walk around, amble slowly. It's the imagery that you get with a fight, right? Lo Lord, this mean, here is a fit. If ye will any more of it, to tell it will ye fond. Okay. We've reached the second fit, or the end of the second fit. What have we got? We've got a hero who ran away. He is getting ready for the fight. He's ready for the fight. We know he's ready for the fight because he ate a ton of sugar and he was drinking. He heard lots of funny stories and romances, and he's got a spear made of a weak wood, and he is dressed in literally everything he seems to own. That's how you know he's ready to fight. Let's keep going. Now, no hold your mouth, par charite, both knecht and laddy frey, and herkneth to me spell. You can guess that the pilgrims are losing interest because this is the second time he's had to remind everybody to listen to him. Now, of laddies love drury anon I will you tell. I'm going to tell you about passionate love of ladies. Men speken of romances of Pris, of Hornchild, of Hippotis, of Bevis and Sergi, of Sir Libu and Plain but Sir Thopas, he beareth the floor of royal chivalry. So we have a list of different romance heroes. Some of them are not recorded romance heroes, maybe just something that Chaucer, the poet, via the Pilgrim, or other way around, that Chaucer, both the Chaucers are making up, is what I'm saying. Hornchild is a romance hero. Bevis of Hampton, yes. Guy Warwick, yes. Watwick is a typo there. I don't think Libo exists. It's very possible that there's a romance that just got destroyed in the Middle Ages and we don't have it. But some of these we just don't have any examples of, and it's very possible that Chaucer just made it up, right? So just understand that as we're reading here. And so Chaucer the Pilgrim is reminding everybody, in the middle of his story, again, interrupting the momentum in a very awkward way, hey, listen, I got something to tell you, because, Topaz, you heard of Hornchild, you heard of Bevis of Hampton, you've heard of Guy Warwick. What does he say in Princess Bride? Morons. You've heard of all these guys. They can't hold a candle to Topaz. He bears the flower of royal chivalry. And so pause here for a second. What is Chaucer the poet? Again, the meta poet here. What might he be saying? And this is an open invitation to discuss. I'm not sure if I quite made up my mind. I do think that part of the fun of this parody is, in fact, that there isn't quite a certain answer to the questions I'm going to ask. But why is Topaz the best example of chivalry? Or why is Chaucer the Pilgrim saying that? What are our options here? Chaucer the Pilgrim could just be a really bad poet. Very possible. He's been presented as such. So he just doesn't know what he's talking about and he's making up a bad poem. Topaz could be one of the best examples of chivalry because he is chivalry in excess. He is chivalry in abundance. He is romance hero trope in abundance. All the pricking and wandering around, all of the getting ready, all of the sweetness, all of the extra activities and hobbies. He does it all and then some. He is the best because he does the most, but he does so much, too much, and it's overwhelming and it's a turn-off. You know what? If he is the best at being a romance hero, if he is the best at chivalry, if he bears the flower of royal chivalry, then is it that chivalry itself is, silly? Dumb? That if we really scrutinize it, if we really watch somebody actually perfect chivalry by doing the most out of it, do we see it for what it is, finally? Do we see chivalry for what it is, which is, a performance? A performance of masculine virtue without any of the substance? Or, I think these seem to be our options. And it could be just that, no, actually Chaucer, the Pilgrim, is just really bad at making a romance hero, and that's the funny thing of it. Or maybe we want a chivalrous knight, but we don't want him to be that chivalrous. We don't want him to be like this, like too much. We want him to be imperfect still. I do think that whatever the reading, and I don't think it's a cop-out to say that it could be any one of these. I think the fun, again, of Chaucer is that he does like to play around, and you don't have a dead set certain kind of allegorical answer to what the poem means with his work. He's too good. God love him. He's too good for our readings, I think, to be that simple. But I don't think it's a cop-out what I'm saying. To say that, maybe it's one of these or a mix of these readings. Or I sometimes wonder if it's one thing, maybe just Chaucer the Pilgrim is a really bad poet. Maybe we wonder at another time, okay, well maybe actually chivalry is something that we should reconsider or look at, or it's kind of silly, at least in excess. Whatever the case, I do think that this romance parody invites us to ask what the good of chivalry is. It does I think, force in a kind of unexpected way. It forces attention and reflection on the virtue, on chivalric virtue in particular. What we come to find about chivalry, TBD. Let's keep going. All right. His good steed all he bestrode, and forth upon his way he glode, as sparkle out of the brond. He's a sparkle. And we actually do have an example of this. Our boy Farambras that we read about in an earlier video, he comes out like a spark from a fire, too. Although he's coming out of a full army of men. Topaz here is just leaving his house. Okay. Upon his crest he bar a tour, and therein sticked a lily flower, God shield his course froshond. Lots of floral imagery with our boy here. And for he was a knecht on tross. He nod slepen in non house, but lean in his hood. His breeked helm was his wonger, and be him baiteth his dextre of herbes fine and good. So his war horse is eating lots of fine, dainty little herbs. Himself drank water of the well, as did the knecht Sir Percival, so warily underwed, till on a day. And the host interrupts, "Na more of this, for God is dignity," quod our host. "For thou makest me so weary of thee very lewdness, that also, wisly God me soul bless, mine ear is aching of thee drasty speech. No switch a ream the devil he betech. This may well be ream dodgerel," quod he. This is, I think, the first known use of the term dodgerel. "We so," quod he. This is Chaucer the Pilgrim. "You want to let me more of me tell than another man, seeing that it is the best ream ye can." "Begod," quod he, "for plainly at a word thee drasty reaming is not worth a tord. Thou dost not else but dispendest team. Sire, at a word, thou shalt no lenger ream. Let's say where thou canst tell a nocht in jest, or tell in prose somewhat at the least, in which there is some worth or some doctrine. So switch up your tale. You're drasty rhyming, not worth a turd. You're doing nothing, but I like this. This is waste time, but dispendest time. It's like spending away all the time. And let's see if you can say something else. Please. Some mirth or some doctrine, something entertaining or something that's going to educate us, but, something else. And Chaucer the Pilgrim says, "Gladly," quod he, "be God as sway to peen. I will you tell a little thing in prose, that ought leaking you, as I suppose, or else certes ye been too dangerous. It is a moral tale virtuous, albeit told sometime in sundry ways of sundry folk, as I usual devise." And he goes in to introduce the Tale of Mellowby. It's funny, he says it'll be a little thing in prose, and Mellowby is a honker of a text. It's quite long, so it's not true. He promises a short story, absolutely not short at all. But let's go up before he gets interrupted. There's lots of procrastinating. I think this is why the host is talking about Chaucer the Pilgrim dispendest team is doing nothing but spending all the time away, because Chaucer the Pilgrim never gets around to what Thopas is actually going to do. Thopas himself never actually gets around to fighting the giant. He never gets around to getting his elf queen, his wife. He's always on the move, and he's always moving around, he's busy, but he's never doing anything. And that's, I think, the poem and the poetic form kind of mimics that. It's always moving around and galloping around, but it's never going anywhere, and it never finishes. The host has to interrupt and stop it, and so it's not quite a conclusion. As far as we know, Topaz is always still wandering around forever. Like, that is all he has ever done and ever will do. And it's boring, apparently. It is just drasty rhyming. And, give us something entertaining, give us something that we can learn from, but give us something else. That's what the host is telling us. So now we've read pretty much the entirety of Sir Thopas. It is quite short, as you can see. what is going on? What's being parodied here? What are we learning about if we're doing a series about medieval masculinity, and I am, what are we learning about medieval masculinity here? I'll stop my share for a second. What are we learning about what it is to be a chivalric hero? It's pretty specific to romance, not just, what does it mean to be a man, but what does it mean to be a man like this? And maybe it's ridiculous. Or maybe being a certain kind of guy who's too into performing chivalry, performing masculinity, performing that kind of virtue. Maybe that's what's being parodied here. Yes, I think the romance genre is being parodied. I think that's why you're getting so much of the rhyming and excess and the tropes that are silly, like, oh, the giant comes out of nowhere, and oh, a fairy queen, I'm gonna look for her, all that. Yes, again, I compared it to the Scary Movie franchise. If you haven't seen it, it's basically their parody movies where it pulls together a bunch of material from different horror movies, but because they're all happening at once, it's so preposterous that it's ridiculous and it's comedic. Similar thing going on here too. So many different romance variables, motifs, I should say, coming together, and now it's like, well, too much, too silly, too ridiculous. But then, is romance itself ridiculous? Is chivalry itself ridiculous? Is chivalry in excess, or chivalry brought maybe even to perfection? Because Topaz seems to perfect it, because he does it all except for fight. Doesn't get around to the fighting part. Now that we see it for what it is, we see it a lot more clearly because there's so much of this chivalric performance going on. We see it very clearly. Do we now realize, well, it's a dumb performance? I don't know that I would land there in my reading of Topaz. I think there is a poking fun at and suspicion of the performance of the highly self-conscious performance of masculine virtue and chivalric virtue. It's so silly to have the aesthetic of masculinity, let's say in this case. Not the term being used or the idea being evoked necessarily in the text, but I'm going to talk about masculinity. Performing the idea of masculinity by picking and choosing what it means to be masculine in an effort really to avoid actually doing the thing that you're supposed to do, which is, in this case, get the girl by killing the giant. And actually having a specific woman that you're looking for, not just a pretty woman. I think what Chaucer the poet is laughing at is, this self-conscious, highly stylized hero who does all these arbitrarily, chivalric things that don't actually matter because they don't actually get to the meat of what the hero needs to do. I think that's why Topaz fails as a good romance hero. Even though he's doing all the other kind of romance stuff in excess, he ultimately doesn't fight, so he can't win. And so he fails in that respect, because he procrastinates and he avoids the thing that he needs to do. And I think that can be our takeaway too, of what does Sir Thopas tell us about medieval masculinity, or what does it have to say about masculinity, if anything. I think we can very easily look at examples today of men who, and women too, in a different way, performing femininity, but this is a series on men, so we'll talk about that. Men who perform masculinity by picking and choosing easy things to accomplish that aren't, it's not just that they're not difficult, but they're also not relevant to the necessary tasks and struggles in life. Let me put that maybe in a clearer way. There are some, let's say, masculine personalities, masculinity gurus or whatnot, who pick and choose different things, characteristics of, like, here's what it means to be a man. It means to be admired by many women, as Topaz is. It means to have strength for its own sake. You know, you're not actually fighting or protecting anybody or winning anything. Maybe you're winning a little contest, but it's very low stakes, right? Strength for its own sake, not to protect anybody or to, you know, get your bride or save her from the giant. You dress really well, and you dress yourself to fight, but you don't actually fight. You know, it's all for show. You have lots of nice things. How did you get the nice things? Obviously not by fighting and defeating the giant. Like not by doing any meaningful stuff. You know, maybe you got this from somebody else. You inherited it maybe. So there's your skin is, you know, beautiful and you're nice to look at, but it looks that way because it's not scarred, because you're not in any fights. Here's what I'm getting at, and I'm not saying therefore now go and get your scars and fight people. It's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that this Topaz figure, he's a joke because he does all of these chivalric masculine tropes in excess, and it shows that none of these things actually matter. Not really. They're not the meat and potatoes, let's say, of being a romance hero. It doesn't matter if you're really good at hawking and you are strong enough to win wrestling competitions and you dress really well and other ladies like you. None of that matters if you're not able to go and defeat the giant. If you're not even willing to face him, you run away at the sight of him because it's too difficult and it's too scary and it's actually a risk. For once in your life, it's a risk and you don't want to face it and you run away. You look the part of the hero, but you're not doing anything with it. I think that is why Topaz is so funny. Yes, he's a romance hero in that he meets all these tropes, but not the key thing. He doesn't do the key thing that the hero is supposed to do. And for that he fails and he constantly wanders around. Yeah, I think that's what Topaz has to offer us. I think Topaz can be a joke, but I think it can also be a warning about getting too caught up in arbitrary markers of manhood that when you really look at them on their face, when you see them very clearly, they mean nothing. They do nothing. They're in service of nobody but yourself. Thank you for watching another episode of the Medieval Masculinity series. We got Topaz done in one video, a first for the series, and I look forward to catching up with you next time on the next medieval masculine guy. All right, take care. Bye.